I'm Rabbi May Ye, and I'm located on Coast Salish and Duwamish land in Seattle, Washington. I am the associate rabbi at Kadima Reconstructionist Community. Emet and I were classmates in I believe, my very first year of rabbinical school. It was my mechina year, my preparatory year, and it may have been Emet's second mechina year. They had to take some time off through school, and I don't know if I remember the very first moment that I met Emet, but what I do remember is that we carpooled to school most days. Emet was my neighbor in West Philadelphia, and I would walk to their apartment and we would wait together on the sidewalk for our classmate Adam to pick us up. And then Adam and I would help Emmett to deconstruct their wheelchair, and we would put it in the trunk of the car and then drive to school and reconstruct it. And so those are really some of my earliest memories with Emmett, is just this daily routine of commuting to school together. Yeah, I did. I visited Emet at least a handful of times in various locations between their visits in the hospital and eventually in hospice. One of my favorite memories, which I luckily had the forethought to record this, is I think this was still a hospital visit. This was before Emmett had moved into hospice. Emmett wanted to give all of his friends blessings, which was just so sweet and special and like them. And I listened to that recording not infrequently because I like to hear their voice and kind of reflect on how they saw me at the beginning of my rabbinical school journey, now that I'm, what, 3 years into being an ordained rabbi. And there's just this funny moment in the recording that always makes me smile, where Emmett's parents walk into the room in the middle of them giving me the blessing. And Sarah Barish Higgins was in the room at the time and says, "Shh, Emmett's giving a blessing." And they're like, "Oh, oh, oh." Miss a few words of Emmett's blessing because of that. But it just kind of makes you remember who was in that room with them, whether it was in the hospital or in hospice, but all towards the end of their life. Yeah, so I think that's definitely a fond memory of just Emmett continuing to give to other people as we also gave to them. I mean, I could look because I took a voice recording of it. So what year would this have been? Blessing, here it is. January 6th, 2019. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a really important and unique and humbling experience to have as I began my rabbinical school journey. I would say that it was a formative experience in just learning, not only learning to be with someone as they were in the dying process, but I think, as you were saying, like really stepping into what mutual aid means, what it means to care for each other, learning how important or not school and our education is, and how sometimes the deepest learning happens in and from our relationships with others. And I think for my whole cohort that year, our deepest learning was the relationships that we had with Emet and the ways that we were walking with them to the end of their life. And that's really my takeaway from my first year of rabbinical school, more so than the Hebrew classes or the text classes or the history classes or whatever it may have been. And then, moving towards the end of their life just with so much intention, I think is something that, yeah, that's been powerful to me and a teacher to me in just how much intention we can have as we move towards the end of the life, towards the end of our lives, and how much autonomy we can have in that, right? With Emmett saying, I want a living funeral. I want to hear all the things people have to say to me before I'm not here. And I want to be able to say to people what I want to say to them before I die. And what a blessing it is in some strange ways that I have this opportunity, that I know, approximately when I will die, and therefore I can make these plans around it. And it's really striking for me, especially right now in this moment. I mean, before I got onto this call, I was working on my Yom Kippur Devar, right? And in which I'm exploring what it means to, talk about who shall live and who shall die, when in Gaza, it's more of a question of who shall die and who shall die and when shall they die. And so it's interesting to be having this conversation at this time and thinking about the intentionality that Emet was able to put towards their own death and dying. I experienced a lot of pretty profound and traumatic grief during my time in rabbinical school. And so in many ways that layers into a time that I've condensed in many ways, because rabbinical school was quite a challenging time for me. And so it's interesting to think about how much that time period had and how much I pushed it to the side and been, you know, yeah, just try to get that period of my life out of my memory. There's something about death being expected, and there's something about the intentionality that we were able to go through that process with Emet that I think in some ways for me made the grief easier, because I saw it coming, and the period was filled with a lot of permission, right? There was permission from Emmett's friends to let them go, to let them die. There was permission from Emmet to, allow us to continue with our lives and do the work that we were going to do in the world, and to not linger so much in their death, and in losing them. And I think Emmet offered so many teachings in their death that to me the grief is more transformed into the lessons that I learned from them and how those shape my life, instead of grief perhaps as we're most familiar with it, in terms of a deep sense of sadness or what have you, because I think everything about how they marched to the end of their life was just so filled with intention and beauty, that is my primary takeaway. Yeah, I know. I think you sent me photos with my name on the calendar. I don't actually remember if I spent nights with
Yeah,
them or
I'm
not. It's possible that I did. I might have. I mean, I do remember taking their dog out, and I had never walked a dog in my life, and I never picked up dog poop in my life. And I was walking, I forget their dog's name. Do you remember?
Roxy.
Yeah,
Roxy.
I just remember walking Roxy around the hospital and having no idea what I was doing. But I'm like, all right, this is what we're gonna do. And so I wonder if that was on a day that I had slept over. But yeah, I don't think I recall it being eventful really at all. Yeah, I don't think I really have many remarks. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that Emmett and I shared, were our convictions for Palestine. And it's, I think, something that I was able to share with Emmett about my intentions for entering the rabbinate, which most people know were political first before they were religious or spiritual. And when I say political, it was for Palestine, right? It was to be an anti-Zionist Chinese American Jewish voice for the liberation of Palestine. And Emmett knew that, and Emmett saw that in me, and Emmett witnessed that in me, and we spoke about that a lot. And they lifted that up in their blessing for me before their death. And yeah, I don't know that I've thought deeply about how Emmett has influenced the way that I take action for Palestine, and the way that disability justice is present in my life. I mean, Emmett left us before COVID, I believe, right? And the world has changed so much, and I continue to work in spaces that require masks. These high holiday services, Rosh Hashanah that just passed, were mask required, and will continue that for the end of time, as far as I can tell at this point. And what I can say is that I think Emet would be proud to know that, but perhaps not even proud because that's just the right thing to be doing, right? So perhaps there wouldn't even be acknowledgement, though sometimes there has to be in a world that really does the contrary to what maybe just should be. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hope that's true for everyone because there are a lot of people that came in and out of Emmet's room during the end of their lives, and not all of the synagogues that he was a part of and communities that Emet was a part of continue to mask, for example, right? So
Right.
Emet touched our lives in multiple ways, and the things that we learned from him, whether consciously or subconsciously, I think impacted us in different ways, and we've taken the lessons in different ways. Yeah, I did, and that was my first time doing that practice, and it's the only time I've actually done that practice since rabbinical school, since I became ordained as a rabbi. It's a really beautiful practice, and I think, the primary word for me right now is intentionality, right? The intentionality that we get to be in these practices of death and dying and grief. And I love just accompanying the body. I mean, I remember a few things. I mean, I think we were reading Harry Potter to Emmett or something, right? It was whatever they would have wanted, whether it was, religious texts or simply Harry Potter. But yeah, there are two moments kind of coming out of sitting Shomer for Emmett that come to mind. One is when someone who worked for the funeral came down to take the body upstairs, right, either via elevator or something, and we were like, no, 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 we need to be with Emmett, right? You're not taking Emmett alone or sending Emmett alone in the elevator. Someone is going to accompany them. And so that felt really important that we got to advocate for that and just kind of teach about this practice, even though I believe we were in a Jewish funeral home, which is evident in my next point, which is when we got to the sanctuary or whatever it may be, there was an Israeli flag. And we all lost our breaths and we were, okay, this cannot be here. What do we do? This funeral is not considering is not sorry continuing with this flag there. And I think I don't remember if Rabbi Linda was there and gave us this blessing or not, but one way or another, we just took it on our own accord to grab that flag and move it out of the way. And this is what needs to be done. Emmett would not approve of this flag being there, and it needs to go. And we got rid of it. This was about Emmett's funeral. This was not about the funeral home's practices. And I think it largely went unnoticed, and no one, you know, took it up with us. I don't remember if we returned the flag at the end or not. But yeah, I mean, I think perhaps it's more of the tachlit, like the nitty gritty of sitting shomer, that it's not just what was the experience of sitting with the body and guarding it for the many hours at night, but more so, going back to mutual aid, what were the things that we were able to take care of because we were present? And what things go unnoticed or untaken care of when one is left alone? I think it was joyful, right? I think just understanding what Emmett enjoyed and to be able to provide that for him felt a joyful and sweet opportunity. And you asked about grief earlier. Like, sure, of course, there was grief to lose your classmate and your comrade, but yet the primary feeling above it all, is sweetness, joy, intentionality, teaching, and lessons that came from that experience. I think I probably did. I don't remember who at this point, but I think most of the slots were for two or three people. Gratitude for being my teacher so early in my rabbinical experience, and being so formative in that journey, and for teaching me so much about the intentionality that we can have when we are alive, and as we move towards death, and as I guide other people in their journeys towards death and dying and grieving. I definitely will always remember what Emet taught me in the intentionality you can have and the beauty that that process can be, and also the privilege that that process can be when we see death coming, which is not always a privilege that we are granted in this lifetime. I was involved a little bit. I remember talking with Eli and Sarah and helping to make the plans. Very unfortunately, I was not able to be there in person, which is really a regret that I have. I was working as a piano teacher and felt that I had already taken too much time off and couldn't possibly ask for another day, which is something that in retrospect I just should have done, even if it meant that I lost my job. But I was still young and naive and made that choice, which I regret. But I do feel that I was thankfully able to be a part of many other aspects of the journey, and was able to hear stories and feel like I was a part of that living
You
funeral
know,
experience. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, that's a blessing that we were able to have that recording too. Yeah, I mean, I think it was Eli DeWitt that took on most of the planning, designing of the ritual, and maybe also Sarah, but I think it was primarily Eli that who was my primary contact in talking through what that experience may be like. And then I know Rabbi Linda Holtzman was a big part of giving Emet smicha, or ordination, before they passed.
May, you are a powerful, radical, and just because some people don't have the idea that you should or that you could be a rabbi doesn't mean that you already aren't one. Because Rabbi Linda Holtzman told me that being a rabbi is learning and teaching, and you have taught me so much, and I have learned from you so much. And that's how I know you're the rabbi. Because you are already doing all of those things. I love you so much.
Hey, oh, hello, hello.
And
Where is he?
hey, how are you?
He's doing a blessing.
Oh, sorry.
and wherever you go, whether it's whether it's Chicago or Philadelphia or Palestine or some other radical off place, you are going to bring blessings to all those there. You teach them how to eat food, how to give, and I know that you want to change this world for the better. I love you.
Amen.
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. Inshallah.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
You're here again.
I'm here again. I was
I
away.
just bought you a present.
Oh yeah. I bought you a knitting starter kit.
Oh, you're such a love. Isn't